So a few of us have had these discussions about preaching the gospel to ourselves. And so I want to make a couple of simple short videos that might help you think through that. And I want to start by showing you how I explain the gospel. So I'm just going to walk it through and show you on my little table here what I think it means to be able to explain the gospel to people, what I call the gospel in 6. So here we go. The first piece of it is God. God is the one who made everything, right? His great passion is His glory, and because He's made us, He can talk to us exactly how He wants, and He's chosen to communicate to us through giving a book called the Bible, and so He is adequately and fully communicating to us through the Scriptures. Well, then that God makes men and women. So mankind shows up. So we are designed to have a relationship with this God. We're designed to be underneath His leadership and authority, to have a relationship with Him, to be God-centered. But instead of being God-centered, we all became fallen. So we're self-centered instead of God-centered. And so therefore there's terrible news about us. You know, we are enemies and aliens, and the wrath of God is on us, and we are spiritually dead and without hope, and so it's just really bad news. But then God slides a better news in here. Though we were made to be God-centered and we became self-centered, He is proposing that we would then become reconciled to God, where God would be both our King and the treasure of our life. And that relationship would go on forever with Him in heaven, not just here, but He would own us, and He would be our King, and we'd follow Him. And unless God's really working in our hearts, we're not going to want that, because we're in this fallen position and we love being separate from Him. So this is the new position of being offered a relationship with God. And if we want that, how are we going to get that? We're going to get that by God sending Christ. So Christ has always been God. He became a man. He lived perfectly, died, rose again, and did everything needed to give us the offer that He has proposed to us. And so at some point in time, a person has to hear this message, and they have to say, all right, God, I understand that I'm fallen, and I agree to that, and I want this new life that You've offered me, and I'm going to get that through the work of Jesus and nothing but the work of Jesus, and we call that response. And so we are responding to a promise that God has given us by faith, and when we do that, His Spirit is put in us, and a couple things happen here. He gives us His Spirit, and that makes us three things. It makes us worshipers of the living God because we love Him. Number 2, it makes us spiritual family, which we call the church, right? So we love God, we love His family, and finally we love His world, and that makes us missionaries. So those are the 3 new areas of life that God's given us, the 3 new loves. We love God first, we love His people second, and we love His world third. This is the gospel and how I like to explain it. So we are now people owned by God, and it's paid by Jesus Christ. So there, we're starting off with those gospel thoughts. So I want to give you a really simple way to renew yourself in the gospel every day, or to preach the gospel to yourself. This is what we mean. First of all, we need to think about our real predicament and our real situation in life. We tend to think certain ways, like we feel alone, or we feel powerless, or we feel anxious, but we want to think about what really the case is. So the first thing we want to think about is we want to think about our old conditions. So this is for those of us who believe in Jesus Christ and are made alive because we've trusted in Christ and the gospel. And when we think about the old condition, we think about who we were as spiritually dead people. We were separated from God, dead and enemies and lost in our sin. And then we need to think about the new thing, the new way that we are now. So I'm going to put new right here. And we're going to use this little icon from the offer in the gospel to remember what it means to be made new. It's a new place that we are. So we once were dead and fallen, but now we're new. Now we belong to God. We have Him as our King and the treasure of our life. The third thing that becomes really important to remember is how that happened, right? And this is what uniquely makes us Christians, is that we are people who never ever forget and always hold clearly that it was Jesus Christ Himself that took us from the old person to the new person and gave us the new life. He is the great how. And then finally, the thing to remember is this new life then that Christ has brought us to has now given us a new walk. And it really is a responding to God in the gospel. So it's a new life He gives. And that new life is summarized in 3 things. It's love God, it's love His church, and it's love His world. Worshippers, spiritual family, missionaries. So this is the new life He's given us, but we really can't engage that by walking in that unless we remember once who we were, now who we are now, how we got that way, and the new life He gave for us to walk. In the coming videos, I'm going to give you case-by-case example about how I would use the gospel to think through, to renew my mind as I deal with temptations and frustrations that tend to get in my way.